Welcome to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. And today I'm super excited. I have a fellow STR Legends mastermind member on the call with me, Mr. Tim Hubbard. He is the CEO and co-founder of Midtown Stays, a short-term rental accommodation company. And we're going to learn all about it. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jasper. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Before we kick it off, I know you're in Colombia, in Medellin. How's life down there right now?
You know, I can't complain. It's it's like one of my favorite places in the world, so I'm usually pretty happy here. It's been really good.
Yeah. How did you end up there? Just out of curiosity.
I really love to travel, and I was coming down here. I had a friend I went to college with that lived down here for about a year. I think like in 2015. So I came down to visit him and stayed for a month or so, and then just kept coming back. And then, eventually I'm like, okay, I'm just going to move there. and now it's been a couple of years now here. So it's been really
good. The city of eternal spring.
That's it. That is it.
And for the listeners, that's because Medellin is pretty much on the equator. So there's no real seasons, but it's also at about, 4,500 feet or something?
Yeah, I think even more than that. 5,000 or 6,000 feet.
Yeah, so it's not as hot as it normally would be on the equator because of the altitude. So it really makes for like an amazing climate where it's like not so hot, not so cold, and it's the same temperature all year round, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the plants grow effortlessly. Everything's green all the time, and it's a good spot.
And, I have a special connection with Medellin because that's actually where I wrote my book, Get Paid for Your Pad.
Oh, really? That's so funny because your book is what got me started on short-term rentals. So literally I read it before I started my first one like 5 years ago, and it really helped.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into today's topic. So I'm super excited because we're going to be doing this a little bit different than normally. Basically, I've been getting so many questions from smaller hosts around Get Paid for Your Pad or in the Short-Term Rental Profit Academy. And, they ask me, they tell me that they've been listening to some of these interviews that I've been doing with our mastermind members. And they really want to understand, like, what should they do in order to grow this business, right? They tell me that they want to get to like 25, 30, 35 properties, but they're not sure where to start. And they want to know the shortcut. They want to know the obstacles that they would be facing. And so I thought it'd be really cool to do free case studies. Because there's free business models, right? There's the ownership model where you're acquiring properties, renting out on Airbnb. And then there's the management model where you partner with homeowners and you take a percentage of the profit. And there's the master leasing model, the rental arbitrage model, where you're essentially going out and getting leases and re-renting them on Airbnb. So I'm going to do free case studies with free STR Legends mastermind members. And today we're going to start with Tim. And he went for the ownership model, right, Tim?
Right. Yeah, I started investing in property, and I've continued that way. So really all the properties I've acquired specifically for short-term rentals had like a good investment foundation to begin with. So that's been my model. Yeah, that's right.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And tell us a little bit about your business work. Where is it located? How many units do you have, et cetera?
Yeah, so I'm from Sacramento originally, and that's where I started investing, I guess a little over 10 years ago now. I have almost 60 properties or rental units, but 32 of them are short-term rentals, so about half. The other ones are either long-term or I have some commercial units. So I started in Sacramento, and as markets change and prices change and returns change, I started looking for other areas. So I ended up going out of California, and I invested a lot in Tennessee. And then most recently, I started investing in Oklahoma City. So I'm in those three cities at the moment.
Got it. Awesome. So we're going to dive in and really trying to understand, if you were to sit down with somebody like a friend, and that friend would ask you like, hey, I want to grow a business like you did. You have 30 minutes to give that person some advice. Like, we're really trying to get to those, to those really essential, crucial elements that people need to know in order to do this. So
Mhm.
let's start with the first question I want to ask you is, what are the top 3 things that you're doing in your business right now that you wished that you started doing when you started?
Um, well, I think one of them would be just communicating more with my team regularly. Actually, when I started, um, I set up a lot of things to be really passive, and I kind of just stepped back and I focused on the investing side. Looking for new properties and hired managers just to kind of handle everything. But I think and I meet once a week basically with my team now, but I do it face to face virtually, and I think it makes a huge impact, makes a big change. Just with my team, knowing that I'm like still here and not, as before, like, I mean, there would be sometimes like a month where I wouldn't show my face, and so I think having consistent, regular communication doesn't have to be a ton, but just having that is really important. Um,
That's a great point, man. That's a great point. And I was just talking to a student in the Profit Academy, and she was having some problems with her VA. And so I asked her, like, when was the last time that you got on a Zoom call with her, just to kind of connect and chat? And then she
mhm.
told me, well, I've never done that. I just give her what she needs to do through, through her task management system.
Yeah.
And that's, so I'm glad you brought it up, man. I think that's really important, is making sure that that human connection is in place with your team. I think is definitely really important.
Yeah. And it really is, I used to do phone calls, but it's just as easy to do a video call, and it makes such a big difference, I think, just having the visual piece.
100%,
So,
man. 100%.
yeah. Um, so that's one thing. Another thing that I've been doing with my housekeeping is that we review. Well, I have a VA that helps me review all of our reviews, and then we go over the negative ones, which I had always done. I want to know what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. But I, in the past, didn't really like send those reviews out to our team. So now when there's a negative review and it specifically mentions cleanliness, we pull those together and we send out an email like every couple weeks to the team or to whoever was responsible for the unit. And not to say that they're doing a bad job or anything, but just to keep things more transparent. So, and they know that those emails are coming now. So I think that's helped, and it's something that's really small and easy to do.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is how to get consistent, high quality cleanings, right? So
Mhm,
that's a good one for sure.
mhm. Um, And I think focusing on other channels, this is one I learned the hard way just recently, because I had an issue with Airbnb and they took my listings down. But, I've been on VRBO and HomeAway before, but I honestly didn't put a lot of effort into those channels. It's kind of like I just threw them up there. And if I got extra bookings from there, then, cool. But after a couple issues with Airbnb recently, I've realized how important it really is to be on multiple channels. And also actually having multiple Airbnb accounts. All my properties were on one Airbnb account. And so maybe splitting up your Airbnb accounts, but also being on other channels and focusing a little more on them. I would say that's a key one.
Yeah, that's a good one too, man. And that's something that people like yourself, but you're not the only one. A lot of people, I think, have kind of learned that the hard way through COVID as well, with all the cancellations and whatnot.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Those are great points. Thank you for sharing that. So imagine, like, when you started out, right? Imagine you had a mentor, like somebody who's already built what you wanted to build. Like, what
Mhm.
would be some of the things that you would have wanted help on? What would you ask that mentor?
Um, I would say a big one, and this is coming from like the investment side of it, is that the returns are different everywhere. They're different in every market. And just exploring opportunities outside of the market that we live in, I think is a huge one because, in the US, for example, we have like 500 MSAs, they call them metropolitan statistical areas where they actually track all the data. But there's actually like thousands of markets in the US and they all have different returns. And so really exploring that idea and not just investing like where we live because it's most comfortable. I think we live where we want to live, but we invest where it makes the most sense to invest. And as a newbie or looking back, that wasn't really maybe a comfortable idea for me, but we have so much technology now and it's so, especially in the US, like real estate's very transparent. It's easy to figure it out with all the data available. So if I had going back and I had a mentor from the beginning, I would have wanted them to push me to go to other markets sooner, probably.
Got it. And one kind of playing advocate of the devil here, but one thing that when I talk to real estate people, they always tell me like it's really important to know your market really well, and to get the really good deals, you kind of have to be a little bit connected. You have to know some people. So my question to you then is, you're saying, hey, you should spread out and go to different markets where the returns are better. But are you not at a disadvantage when you're investing in a property compared to the locals?
So it depends on like what type of property you're investing in. So most all my properties are small multifamily apartment buildings. And if you're buying one that's under 4 units or it's 4 units or less, those are almost always showing up on the MLS or, on realtor.com or Zillow. They're easy to find. Now, when you step from 4 units to 5 units and it becomes a commercial property, at least in the eyes of a lender, then it's much more important, in my experience, to have a broker or someone that's finding deals for you, because a lot of those deals never show up on the open market. Mm-hmm. But you got to start somewhere, you know what I mean? I think if you know exactly what you're looking for, so you find some of these other markets and you know the exact zip code that you want to be in, you know exactly how much you want to spend, and if you want to do repairs or you don't, or what size units. The more you know exactly what you're looking for, you can tell that to a broker. And then if they find something, really the main thing is just being able to close on that property. And then once they see that you've closed on the property, well then boom, they can trust you, and then they're going to start finding better deals for you. So it kind of has to start somewhere, but that's what I've done. And it is true. I mean, having connections, you can get much better deals. But I think that's more, for those slightly larger properties, it helps more than maybe it does for the smaller ones.
Got it. Awesome. What were some of the biggest challenges and obstacles that you ran into, and how did you overcome them?
So financing, financing's been a challenge, and it changes all the time. When I was first getting started and I didn't have a lot of, as much income coming in, and I've always worked for myself. So that makes it a little more difficult to get financing too. But what I learned there is that basically every lender is different, so I might get rejected by 5 lenders, but then there's one lender that's totally happy to lend to me. And so I think that was a big learning curve, is just not being intimidated if you get rejected by a lender, and just reaching out and talking to as many people as you can, because they all have their, especially like local lenders. If you find a property, all the big banks, the biggest banks usually have like the same set of rules and regulations and stuff, and they don't really bend too much on those. I'm talking like Wells Fargo and Bank of America and those types of places. But if you find a property in a market and you find a local lender, like a credit union or someone that just lends in that city, for example, a lot of times they'll look a lot more at the property itself than, and if the property makes sense and they're familiar with the market, then they're much more inclined to lend on it. So I think that's actually a really big one, because if you can't get the financing, then you can't do the deal, right? So,
Yeah, unless you're a billionaire and you just have
right,
all the cash.
right, exactly. Yeah.
So what are some, because financing obviously is a big challenge, right, for people who want to invest. What are
Mhm.
what are the best ways to find lenders? Do we just go to the big and the smaller banks, or are there other ways as well?
So a lot of times, your broker, or whoever finds the property for you, and I really recommend working with a broker. I mean, that's what they do. But a lot of times they have lenders that they prefer to work with, so you can get great referrals from a broker, or a real estate agent. But aside from that, if it's a new market that you're in, you can just Google banks, and usually the smaller banks are going to be more flexible. Um, so, you can tell if they have two branch offices in the city, or maybe they only have one, they're probably going to be more flexible than maybe a bank that covers 20 states or is nationwide or something like that.
Hmm. Got it. Awesome. So, if you were to start over again, what is something that you would do different?
So again, coming from like the investment side of things, I would just focus on small studio apartments as investments, because I found for me that they've returned the best, and I also have less challenges with guests, because there's not as many guests going to the properties. There's less chance of parties. Um, but a lot of the expenses are less too. And if you're just starting out investing, if you're buying a building with 4 studios, for example, versus 4, 2-bedroom apartments, it's probably going to cost less too. So the entry level price is probably going to be less. The utilities are going to be less most of the time, because it's a small space. Um, and then there's way less guest challenges, because if it's listed for 2 people, the chances of like 20 people showing up and trying to speak by the rules, it's just much less likely. So I found the most success with the small units. I'd probably focus on those.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And I own 2 studios myself, and I totally agree with you. And the interesting thing is that, when you compare short-term rentals to long-term rentals and to the real estate market, where when people buy a house to live in, because there's 3 ways that you would need accommodation: either to live in, you buy it, or you rent it, or it's a short-term rental, right? You stay for a couple days or a couple weeks. When you stay for like only a few days, the size of the apartment is not so much related to the price, I found,
Right,
versus long-term rentals and when you purchase a house, right?
right.
So it's more about the experience, right? So if you have a small studio, but you're creating an incredible experience, you can
Hmm.
charge per square feet. You can charge a really high
Yeah.
rate for with a short-term rental, right?
That's true. And you also, if you're, I've liked in the past, I've done a lot of value add deals, where most of my properties are historic, and a lot of them are like over 100 years old. So I've done a lot of renovations. And if you're buying a smaller property, it's going to cost less to renovate, right? Because it's just smaller. I mean, less flooring and less paint and less all of that. So just on a global return, the short term or the small studios have been best for me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense, man. That makes sense. What do you think are some of the driving factors behind your success, and whether that's something personal like your mindset, or something you did, or some strategy that you applied?
Hmm. So I got a few things. I mean, I would say, first of all, I discovered really early on that I loved traveling, and I wanted to be able to do that forever and not have to, rely on a job or something like that. So I had a lot of motivation, I guess, to figure out something that was going to work and that would allow me to do that. And that for me has been real estate. And actually, I mean, for a lot of people, that's real estate, right? I mean, more people become wealthy through real estate than almost any other thing, at least in the US. So having that motivation, but then also like coupling that with consistency, like knowing what I'm going for, but just working at it a little bit each day. And one of my favorite books is called The Slight Edge. And that's basically all it talks about. It's just like, little actions that we take each day, they add up to big results. And so doing that little by little, especially, investing in real estate, it's not like a get rich scheme thing. It does take a little bit more time. You can't scale maybe as quickly as you could if you were doing the lease arbitrage model or something like that. I don't want to say you can't, because you can always partner. It's just typically you're not going to scale as quickly as you could if you're not actually buying the properties. So say, is that loud in the background?
I
Sorry.
hope that ambulance is not for you.
Yeah, no. So I would say, yeah, motivation, consistency, but then also education. Like I love learning, and so I'm always trying to learn more about the industry and about real estate, and that makes it so I'm like, the investments I make, I feel more comfortable with, and um, yeah, education's big. So the STR Legends group has been awesome, by the way, because there's so many super successful people in there, and it's just a great group to learn from, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, learning, always be learning is actually one of the, like, a core value that we have in our company as well. It's really important. Cool, man. Is there well, we've gone through quite a lot, and I definitely learned a few things. So this is super exciting. I'm sure that's really helpful for people out there who want to build a business with the ownership model in short-term rentals. Anything else you wanted to share that you think is important, or any other advice for somebody who's just starting out?
Yeah, I guess I'd add one last thing, and that's that, people are always trying to like time the market, right? And especially now, it's been a really crazy year. But the reality is that if we're investing in a property for cash flow, and we're getting financing that's fixed for, a lot of times 3 decades, then our costs aren't really going to change. And that property is going to make sense no matter really what the market's doing around it. If prices are going up or going down, it's not going to affect us as much as if we're investing just for cash flow. So I'd say if someone's interested, don't let the news and the media and all that get in the way of stopping someone, because that stuff's always there. And, if a property makes sense from day one because of cash flow, then it's going to make sense later on. So, I would say don't be intimidated by everything going on in the market.
Dude, I love that, man. I think that's incredible advice. Investing is for the long term. It's for the cash flow, and I know it's maybe not as sexy as buying a home and flipping it and making like 50K in like 6 months and stuff like that. But in the end of the day, it's I totally agree with you. Like the way I think about it is it's wealth creation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody asked me the other day, is like, how much has your property in Colombia appreciated since you bought it? And I'm like, I don't even know how to look that up in Colombia. But also I don't really care. You know what I mean? Because it's the cash flow is coming in every month, and it's a really good return on the money I put in. So I mean, the price, it's like whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. It doesn't really matter, right? If you're investing on the long term, I'm not going to sell it anyway.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you, man. If the cash flow makes sense, then that's all that matters, really. And you definitely don't want to wait and you listen to the news and you're hearing stories of like, oh, the real estate market's going to go down 20% in the next 6 months.
Right.
So you should wait and buy at the low and then sell at the high.
Yeah, they say it's better to buy real estate and wait than wait and buy real estate. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And especially now, man, like at least I feel like if you look in history, like there's always been inflation. So,
Mm-hmm.
homes can depreciate in the
Mm-hmm.
short term. But I mean, I don't think there's anywhere in the world where you can find a property and you can say, this property is now worth less than a similar property was in that spot 50 years ago or 30
That's a
years
great
ago.
point. I
You know what I
totally
mean?
agree.
That's
Yeah.
you probably won't be able to find that. So,
Yeah.
over time, especially, I don't know what your opinion is on this, but especially now, interest rates seem to be kind of stuck at almost zero, right?
Yeah.
The central banks are creating so much money. The governments are spending so much money. Like, isn't that,
Totally.
to me, it just feels like there is so much upward pressure on hard assets, because of the money
Absolutely.
creation.
Yeah. I mean, they just printed trillions of dollars in the US, and that money has to go somewhere for sure. So inflation, yeah, if we have hard assets, then we can like dodge inflation, right? And
Exactly.
the beautiful thing about it is like if you're using debt for property, amazingly low interest rates, historically low. Like the reality is, we're not even paying for these properties ourselves, anyways. It's our short-term rental guests and the rents coming in from that, or our long-term tenants if we have long-term tenants. So we're like we're not even paying for the property anyways. So, um, but yeah, I think having hard assets is 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 a good strategy with all the money printing and everything going on.
Yeah, 100%, man. I was talking to my roommate today, and we were talking about this, and I asked him a question. I was like, if you have two options, I either give you $100,000 right now, or I give you $100,000 home, and you would have to hold on to those for the next like 10 years. Then what would you rather have, the dollars or the home? If you can't touch
Mm-hmm.
it during those 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
And I'd much rather have $100,000 home if I wasn't able to touch it for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for joining. This was super interesting to talk to you. The first case study on the ownership model. The next couple episodes, we're gonna get somebody on who grew a management model company, and we're gonna ask the same questions and trying to really dig and see what are the real drivers to success. What are the challenges? What are the things you have to overcome, and what are some of the things that you want to do now when you're starting out, that will really help you grow that business. So we'll do the management model, we'll do the master leasing model. Tim, thank you so much, man. And for people who want to come to Sacramento or in any other of your markets, like where can they find your properties?
Yeah, my website's midtownstays.com. So they can just log on there and they'll find me on there. Or they'll find the
Awesome.
property.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Cool. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining. And to the listeners, thank you for listening. And next week, we're back with the next case study. So stay tuned. And until next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasper.